been burning for a week now.
We're almost to 2018, but the 2017 fire season is still in full blaze. Southern California now feeling the heat. It was an alert that warned more than 12 million people of unprecedented fire danger in Southern California. The Thomas Fire was the first to start. Winds fueled it, sparking other fires. The Thomas Fire, more than 230,000 acres. It is 7.5 times the size of San Francisco, or another way to look at it, it's larger than New York City and Boston combined.
Tonight, that series of fires still scorching Southern California. Roughly 116,000 acres now burned. Flames leaping over the Pacific Coast Highway.
Greeting to the citizens of the world. We are anonymous. We have been prompted to warn you all fellow citizens that recent California wildfires, especially since October 2017, were not natural disasters, but most likely results of geoengineering. They definitely seems to have deployed directed energy laser weapons. How does a forest fire cause total obliteration to houses without trees themselves burning down? What type of so-called forest fire leave trees intact, but vaporize homes without a trace? Firefighters reported that it is like we've been nuked. Never seen anything like this. If these fires were caused by wind, why isn't everything blown all over the place? Why aren't there piles of ash on the streets and debris in the trees? Why was the aluminum wheels on this car melted? Trees aren't burned around it. Nothing around this car burned to generate this type of heat. How did so many vehicles sustain melted metal when the trees and grass and asphalt were left unscathed by the flames? Many of them trees are pine, which ignite and burn with little effort since pine trees are very flammable due to their sap. Some of the neighborhoods were burned so thoroughly there was only 2 inches of ash left of the entire house. No way this was a forest fire. A key question here is, where did the fire come from when it didn't burn many of trees between obliterated houses? You would have to be a fool to think these are wildfires. Some felt a weird energy in the air that made their heart palpitate. Some felt an energy vortex move through their homes. A firefighter known by one of the guests on a radio show told some shocking details on the air. He said a cop went and knocked on the door of a house and told them they had to be out of there in 1 hour. The fire was nowhere around the home at that point, and that's why they had an hour. The policeman came back to that same house in 5 minutes and the house was fully engulfed in flames. No way the fire would have moved from nowhere around there to fully engulfing the house in 5 minutes. Note that, in lot after lot, there's little to no debris where there once were houses. Cars were torched, yet trees untouched. The car tire rubber and glass were nowhere to be found but totally combusted, and homes were reduced to unrecognizable rubble and ashes. No official story about how so many fires self-ignited all at once in the middle of the dark of night. 5G, Pacific gas and electric, climate change with Diablo winds are all being talked about, but none come close to explain the hellfires that occurred in torched metal, glass, rubber, granite countertops, toilets, stoneworks to the ground in minutes. Virtually no structures left at all. Cars were melted, brick foundations dissipated, but left trees and other buildings intact. California fires are burning at over 2750 Fahrenheit degree. Normal house fires max out at 1700 degree. Class take thousands of degrees to melt, which means these fires generated their own direct heat, like a directed energy butane torch, except they are using directed energy laser technology to pulse the plasma clouds, stir the wind for energy and release up to 1 trillion watts of laser power at any one source. This is why cars and homes completely melted, but shrubs, leaves, plants and neighbors' houses were untouched. It is directed energy weapon, amplified and focused cyclotron resonance. What are the chances that 3 of the largest avionics military laser companies are located in the same exact area as the Santa Rosa, California fires occurred, yet none of them got torched? L3 Technologies, Keysight, Ag Industries and Sonoma Design Group are all in Santa Rosa and are held by some of the largest weapons manufacturers. Defense Daily ran an article on September 27, 2017. The U.S. Air Force plans to conduct an experiment in fiscal year 2018 using directed energy weapons to counter small unmanned aircraft systems. The experiment will seek to determine whether high-energy lasers and high-power microwaves could help in such ways. Also, now let us look at some flip cars in Santa Rosa. Neither fire nor wind would flip cars like this. Directed energy weapons can levitate and flip over cars, as happened on the 9/11. Those burned, levitated and flipped vehicle pictures show eerie resemblances to the California wildfires. Forest fires do not flip a car like this. This is not normal, but you can find a similar phenomenon from the 9/11 World Trade Center Ground Zero. You saw this same thing on the obliterated cars on the 9/11. The photos show how houses usually end up after a fire has burned them. They are normally blackened. However, the basic structure of houses remain after the fire. They do not vaporize into dust and a few inches of ashes like those houses obliterated by the recent California wildfires.
This is not a carbon fire. This is the only fire in the whole wide world that's considered a forest fire where the forest did not burn. The forest didn't burn here. All the glass melted. All the structural materials that used to be a house have disappeared. They have disappeared. You have a couple of bent poles here, a couple of poles that are bent, but you have absolutely no materials. The houses have not fallen. The houses have disappeared. The materials of these contents of these houses are gone.
The houses in Santa Rosa were turned to dust except for a small amount of debris. That's right, the World Trade Center buildings 1, 2 and 7. This is a photo taken at ground level after the towers fell. Where's all the debris? These buildings were massive. This is another photo taken at ground level, with the van sitting on the ground. There were 1.25 million tons of debris piled on the ground. But it's not there. This is a list of the debris that should be piled up in the photo. 43,600 windows, 600,000 square feet of glass, 200,000 tons of structural steel, 4 million square feet of gypsum, 6 acres of marble, 425,000 cubic yards of concrete. Where did they go? According to mainstream media reports, the New York City Authority under the then Mayor Rudy Giuliani allegedly swiftly exported all of the debris to China. However, if all the aforementioned building materials actually had fallen on the ground, there should have been a considerable seismic activity recorded. Besides the fact that the 14 so-called Israeli art students, a part of an art group Gelatin Project the B Thing, who were linked to Mossad spy ring, got construction passes and lived on the 91st floor of World Trade Center Building 1 for months and wired 3 WTC buildings with explosives called BB-18 for the 9/11 inside job controlled demolition with the cooperation of the then WTC security company, Securicom's principal Marvin Bush, Bush Jr.'s brother and Silverstein, who managed to pull the World Trade Center building complex in 2001. Then acquired the $4.6 billion from the biggest insurance payout fraud in history. There are theories that directed energy weapons were also used at the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001.
Know that there were 14 separate fires. How did 14 separate fires start over such a wide area? This is one of the cars, or trucks, or something that was in this fire, and you'll notice that the glass here, which has a melting point of between 2,600 and 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? We're talking forge, foundry, furnace temperatures to melt this glass. Glass does not melt on its own, guys. Open air fires do not create this kind of complete combustion of the materials, all right? right?
This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion, though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really? To change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts.
When they say there will be heavy wet snow at 40+ degrees, and there is, all appears okay. The global elites have, it seems, covered all the bases.
This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental, however, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
In January 2011, E.L. Rothschild LLC, a private investment company led by Chairman Sir Evelyn de Rothschild and CEO Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, announced the signing of a definitive agreement to acquire a 70% interest in Weather Central, the world's leading provider of interactive weather graphics and data services for television, web, and mobile. Weather Central's forecasting offers businesses and consumers a suite of science-driven weather information products. The company will continue to operate under CEO and founder, Terry Kelly, as well as current management. Financial terms of the acquisition were not disclosed.
China's seen, central China, parts of central China, seen the worst drought that they've had in many decades. Now, you've got this investment with your wife in Weather Central. How could that actually help out in terms of planning for things such as droughts?
Well, I think first of all, we have 25 broadcast clients currently in China, and we are the #1 provider of broadcast weather graphic solutions in the country. I mean, you had this downpour, I believe, in the last 24 hours, which has caused even people losing their lives, and situations like this. With the detail that we can put up through the technology that we give to the various weather stations, this makes people more aware of it. On the whole, it's a question of giving the opportunity. I mean, we have also launched an operation called My Weather, which gains access to the first truly personalized weather application for the web and mobile devices. You can go up on myweather.com.
1974, Weather Central is a global provider of professional on-air, online, print, mobile, and enterprise weather solutions and forecasting, with 180 employees, including 70 meteorologists. Weather Central provides weather graphic systems, proprietary forecast models. Weather Central has secured a leading 46% market share of North America's weather information delivery market for broadcast and media, delivering content to hundreds of millions of viewers. It is the largest provider of broadcast and interactive web weather solutions for media companies in the US, Canada, and Mexico. Weather Central has more than 400 broadcast television clients in 21 countries worldwide. It provides weather forecasts to millions of users daily by distributing real-time forecasts, interactive maps, and storm warnings based on each user's exact address. Why would the Rothschild be so interested in owning the largest and most recognized weather modeling organization out there? Why would the Rothschild wish to have the controlling interest in the world's leading provider of interactive weather graphics and data services for television, web, and mobile? Because when you are involved in climate-decimating geoengineering programs, you must also control the forecast models to cover your tracks. The Rothschild control not only central banking all over the world and United Nations IMF, International Monetary Funds, World Bank, but now the weather. The scope and scale of the global spraying of our skies can hardly be comprehended. SAG, Stratospheric Aerosol Geoengineering, and SRM, Solar Radiation Management. The massive web of supporting structures for these programs is mind-bending. What is even more difficult to understand is how all of this happens in plain sight, and almost none seem to connect the dots. Defense contractor Raytheon does all the forecast modeling for the National Weather Service and NOAA. Lockheed Martin does the modeling for the FAA, since both of these private defense contractors are up to their necks in weather modification patents and programs. The forecasts are more or less the scheduled weather. Now, with the Rothschild acquisition of the dominant private modeling organization, the control of weather modeling seems complete.
We can control our weather.
This control of forecasts and graphics provides for the constant visual conditioning that makes the population more likely to accept the constant spraying and manipulation of our weather as normal. When the nightly weather forecast animation matches what the public sees in the sky, right down to the upper level haze or overcast from the constant spraying, all seems to correlate, so nothing more is questioned. When the forecasters predict a hurricane will make an unprecedented 90-degree turn, and it does, nothing seems wrong. On April 28, 1997, U.S. Defense Secretary William Cohen made the following statement according to the DoD. Others terrorists are engaging even in an eco-type of terrorism whereby they can alter the climate, set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. So there are plenty of ingenious minds out there that are at work finding ways in which they can wreak terror upon other nations. It's real, and that's the reason why we have to intensify our counter-terrorism efforts. What Cohen was alluding to at the time would only become known several years later in declassified documents. Geoengineering. The quote, although it seems out of place in time, exposes government's interest in a whole new type of weapon modifying the natural weather to cause catastrophic damage and loss of life to enemies of the United States through electromagnetic waves.
The fact is, we are dealing with microwave weapon technology. How else would this tree catch on fire from the inside?
A haunting but mesmerizing scene from the wildfires in Sonoma County. A man came across this tree burning from the inside out. Matthew McDermott was driving around looking for escape routes as multiple fires closed in on the area he was in. The tree appears to be hollowed out by embers and flame.
Bark and the heartwood of the tree are two different densities, and the cylindrical shape makes it so that when the microwave energy or any X-ray or any electromagnetic frequencies, there's a unique dual density bilayer of cylindrical shape of the tree, so that when the electromagnetic energy goes into the tree, it ricochets instead of going straight through. It ricochets, and then the energy ricochets on the interior of the heartwood. And what happens is that heats up the interior, especially with microwaves. This is why, like, if you look around your cell phone towers and you see that there's a lot of branches or a lot of trees that have like a saggy bark. I call it like a saggy, like a sock effect. Their bark is kind of like shrunken. A lot of the trees, you'll see the bark is just kind of shedding off the trees. That's what happened when we went from 3G to 4G. The higher intensity of the electromagnetic energy that was being pummeled through the trees on the periphery of the tree cluster. What it did was it accelerates the dehydration in the tree, because the microwave frequency enters into that tree and ricochets instead of going through. That's why you can't take an X-ray of a tree, because the X-rays don't go through the tree. They ricochet on the interior of the tree, which is why this is so significant. The way these fires burned, it's through some sort of an electromagnetic energy that they're pumping through. That's why this tree did not combust on the outside. Because that's just how trees work. You can't get electromagnetic energy to go pass through a tree. So that would make 100%. That would make 100% explanation for why this tree is burning on the inside. Something with a great electromagnetic force.
A directed energy weapon, DEW, is a ranged weapon system that inflicts damage at a target by emission of highly focused energy. Potential applications of this technology include anti-personnel weapon systems, missile defense system, and the disabling of lightly armored vehicles or mounted optical devices. The Pentagon, DARPA, the Air Force Research Laboratory, United States Army Armament Research, Development and Engineering Center, and the Naval Research Laboratory have been researching and testing technologies like directed energy weapons for many decades.
How did they create a laser with such devastating force? by assembling an array of 192 lasers and aiming them at a single hydrogen pellet the size of a BB. These 192 lasers are linked together by a twisting jungle of tubes that snake through this mammoth 10-story structure, which is the length of 3 football fields. The plan is to fire all 192 laser beams at once. Each beam starts out low-powered, about the size of what's inside your DVD player. But as they pass through the complex maze of tubes, they merge into one super beam. This super beam fires 500 terawatts of power in 2 billionths of a second, roughly 500 times the entire peak power output of the United States. When that light strikes the hydrogen pellet, it cooks it to over 800 million degrees.
But lasers formerly known as directed energy weapons have been used by the U.S. Army's ground forces for years. But now, the Pentagon's Air Force Research Lab, AFRL, wants to take the next step and give these seemingly futuristic weapons a set of wings. As announced earlier this week, Lockheed Martin was awarded the contract as part of AFRL's Self-Protect High Energy Laser Demonstrator, SHIELD, program.
There are a number of forms of directed energy weapons, including microwave weapons, laser weapons, particle beam weapons, sonic weapons. Nikola Tesla was first to demonstrate the world what scalar waves are. In about 1908 Tesla discovered that scalar energy, this can then be used to produce earthquakes induced at distant aiming points. He noted that this could easily get out of control once it begins vibrating within the Earth and could actually cause the Earth to vibrate to pieces. His own head proved so powerful that during its testing phase he destroyed it with a sledgehammer to keep its vibrations from destroying his entire neighborhood. In his famous Colorado Springs experiment 1899, where he sent electric energy through the air without cables to light bulbs at a distance of 30 miles. The electricity was sent quicker than light and the bulbs received more energy than Tesla had sent away. Over unity effect, because the transport vehicle for the electric energy, an electric scalar wave, sucked free energy from the surrounding nature, free neutrino power, during its voyage. Nikola Tesla detected the electric scalar wave, which is linked to free energy. Neutrinos, which often are quicker than the speed of light, are an aspect of scalar waves, and can be harvested for free. Scalar waves are produced when two electromagnetic waves of the same frequency are exactly out of phase. It does seem that directed energy, laser, weapons as known as Tesla's death ray are being used for defense industry and military experiments, and to create the state of emergency, and for changing the zoning for housing development. Also to depopulate biodiversity corridors designated by the United Nations Agenda 21 and 30. Geoterrorism is not just a way of softening up the populace for Agenda 21, it also provides an opportunity for the geoengineers to test their new weather weaponry and other warfare technologies. Not only can they determine the efficacy of their advanced satellite-based weapons, they can evaluate how the people will react to the celestial assaults.
Area over here, Santa Rosa evacuation area. Here's the identical map of where they want to rezone everything. And if we scroll down, here's all the properties, and you see conditional use, design review major, and here we go again. Here's the same roads: Piner, Guerneville, West College Avenue, and this is the pending development on the other side of the freeway. Same exact stuff: College, Pacific, Fulton. Right where they want to redesign everything with design reviews. Oh, how conveniently a middle of the night, out of nowhere fire with 2,000 degrees plus temperature Fahrenheit. Look at this map. This is on the east side. This is Hone Avenue, Yulupa. Again, it's just a coincidence, folks. Coincidence theory. This is the area, Yulupa down in here, part of the evacuation area. How convenient that the redevelopment area coincides perfectly with the Santa Rosa development plan. Sebastopol Road, Stony Point Road, all in the evacuation sites. You cannot make this stuff up. This was planned, organized well in advance. Geoterrorism, folks.
A coincidence theory with all the zoning changes happening at lightning speed. There is a group of California standing up for their rights. Constitutionally, it fits in perfectly with the new zoning ordinances that have been voted on by unelected boards. This is how geoterrorism is especially utilized to scare the people away from certain areas that have been identified as special according to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. There's been plans for decades now to create megacity centers with smart grid technology, strategic relocation, wanting everyone in the megacity, and this is how they get the people in countryside into the megacities. It is a UN agenda moving right on schedule pretty much everywhere as the UN program.
According to the UN website, again, sustainable development that meets the needs of the present, without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Well, don't we have to be kind of a prediction king to be able to do that? Let me translate. They want to evaluate and approve and reject anything and everything you do in order to make sure it's for the good of future generations. In other words, doesn't matter what the individual wants to do as long as it's good for the collective.
Replacement migration has been the main cause of the Europe's migration crisis. Like the World Trade Center, the incinerated lots of houses in California are quickly getting cleaned up for covering up the evidence that massive crimes have been committed, instead of giving full investigations to what caused the extremely suspicious and natural fire damages and exhaustive yet mysteriously selective destructions, which defies the laws of physics. We must spread the awareness of what is happening, especially with the California's so-called wildfires, the fake natural disaster, most likely done by the new technology-directed energy laser weapons by U.S. Air Force and defense industry to test and demonstrate the destructive abilities for the defense industry's demands. And we should demand the investigation. They incinerated hundreds of thousands of acres and obliterated thousands of innocent people's homes and businesses, as they cold-heartedly pulled the 9/11 inside job in 2001 as the Operation Northwoods plan set a precedent. It is up to us to wake up the New World Order and UN agendas and be the change. We will never stop fighting for the truth and justice.
We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect